Hi, my name is diemmiaile, and welcome to my YouTube channel. This is my first ever YouTube video because I wanted to review this book, okay? I'm just mad. I'm mad, and let's get started, okay? Let's get started about why I'm mad. Because Book Talk has been promoting Miss Colleen Hoover over and over again, and from what I have read before, I have read one other Colleen Hoover book before Ugly Love, which was It Ends With Us. And I really, really loved that book. And I really like her writing, and it's just very immersive. And that book does have a special place in my heart. And then I read this book. And now I don't know what to think. This book screams toxic. That is what I will start off with, okay? This book screams toxic, and if you guys see this as a romance book, please, you guys who have been hyping this book up as a romance book, y'all need therapy. I am so sorry. This is just my opinion, but let me explain, okay? So if you don't know the synopsis, and there will be spoilers, okay? If you don't know the synopsis of this book, basically it has a dual time period, so it has the present and then it has 6 years before, and every chapter goes back and forth between the two. So in the present, it has the main relationship, which is with the main character. Her name is Tate Collins, and the love interest is Miles Archer. When Tate moves in with her brother in an apartment in San Francisco, her neighbor across the way is Miles. Tate's brother, Corbin, and Miles are both pilots. They're co-workers. It's the trope of this book is basically brother's best friend. She falls for brother's best friend, you know? Basically, they have undeniable chemistry, but there's something holding Miles back from wanting to be in a relationship ever, and he hasn't had sex in 6 years. He hasn't kissed anybody in 6 years. He's never been intimate with anybody in 6 years, and the entire time, Tate's like, what the fuck happened 6 years ago? And she just knows that it has something to do with this girl, Rachel. That's all she knows. And basically, Miles can't help deny the chemistry that they have together, the sexual tension they have, so they start a no-strings attached relationship. We know how that's going to turn out, you know? And Miles has 2 rules. His rules are never ask about the past and don't expect a future. And the entire book basically tries to go through what happened to Miles to have him be such a dick, basically. Be such an asshole to Tate. That's basically how I saw it. And I don't consider this a romance book, okay? Because the romance is not romantic. The romance is fucked up, okay? He does not do... what happens is that Tate is a doormat and keeps hoping and wishing that Miles will change for her, that Miles will open up to her, and he's just like, fuck you, objectify you, and he's straight up about it too, and her brother finds out, right? Corbin finds out that they have been having sex and stuff, and Corbin asks Miles, do you plan on falling in love? Are you in love with Tate? And he's like, no. And then Corbin, the brother, asks, well, do you plan on falling in love with her? And she's right there, too. Tate's right there. And Miles is like, no. What the oh my god, he does some fucked up shit in this. And this is the first toxic thing that I will point out that made me so goddamn mad, is that I'm scared that teenage girls are gonna read this and think that they can get into a no-strings attached relationship and have it come out happily. Because your heart's going to get broken, sis, if you're going to think that. So here is a quote that I tabbed that made me so mad. It says, and this is from Tate's point of view, okay? Yet I sit here pretending to be fine with just sex. Maybe if it starts out that way, it'll eventually end up being something more. Bitch, don't ever go into a relationship thinking it's gonna be more when there's, like, you're just gonna get your heart broken, and she does over and over again, and she keeps over and over again, keeps forgiving him, and he's just a real dick about it, and so you're like, why is he such a dick? This is where it gets into the past. So 6 years previous, he was obsessed with this girl. Basically, that's the thing that is bad about these books too, is that it's basically love at first sight. And there's no reason why any of the characters, like, you could not tell me 3 things about Tate that Miles would like about her. She's a nurse. She's hot. Okay, like, what about her personality? I don't even know her favorite color. Oh my gosh. And I don't even know what she likes to do. Does she even do anything besides nursing? Like, she's self-insert. You can self-insert yourself. It could be anybody. And it just really annoys me because I have no idea why they even like each other. And the same thing goes for 6 years previous. Miles had a girlfriend. Very, very, very complicated. I'm not going to get into it. Just read it if you haven't. Basically ends up being his stepsister. He falls in love with his stepsister, okay? And she gets pregnant. Her name is Rachel. And she's obsessed with Rachel. So goddamn obsessed with Rachel that he ends up spitting out poetry. It's written like poetry, which I really honestly love. Like, I love how they, like, made those chapters where it's in Miles' perspective about Rachel to be kind of poetic. I don't know. I really liked that. But that's just a personal opinion. And basically, Rachel gets pregnant. They have a baby, and Miles is in love. He's like, oh my god, like, my life is so happy. Like, I love Rachel. I love the baby. Bam. Car crash. They fall into a river. It's very, very sad. And he like, tries to get out. He tries to save the baby and Rachel, but the baby's stuck. Rachel's in there, and the car's drowning, and hence why the cover looks like that, drowning. And Rachel's screaming at him, get the baby, like, don't care about me, get the baby. But the baby's stuck, and he takes out Rachel, and basically, Rachel, this bitch, blames Miles, the baby dies, okay? The baby drowns. And Rachel blames Miles for that happening, like, right after, because they're both in grief. So when they're grieving, Rachel basically puts it on Miles, and Miles is just kind of so traumatized and feels like love, it's just not worth it to feel the good parts of love if the bad parts just feel this painful. And that's why it's called ugly love. Like, oh, it's so painful, like, losing the baby, having Rachel hate me, taking away Rachel's happiness. I don't deserve to be happy. That's what Miles thinks. And so he says, I'm never going to love again. I'm going to close myself off. That's basically the backstory of why he's such a dick to Tate. But then he kind of, by the end of the book, I don't know if you even care, Tate and Miles end up together because, like, there's some fucked up shit that happens. So basically, they're having sex, right? They're having sex, and Miles, during sex with Tate, says, oh God, Rachel, bitch! Like, he literally said another girl's name. And 6 years ago, too. Your ex-girlfriend, you're saying your ex-girlfriend's name while you're having sex with the girl who you might care about a lot, but you don't want to admit that to yourself. Like, why did Miss Hoover put that in the book? Like, that makes me just think that Miles has never gotten over Rachel, like, ever. that he's still hung up on Rachel 6 years later. Because after that, they break it off, and then Miles goes to see Rachel to get closure, which he does, and then he comes back to Tate, and then they end up marrying and then having another kid, which doesn't make sense to me because he's... I'm so sorry, I'm going on a rant, but basically, long story short, Tate and Miles stay together. And do you want to know the lesson that this book gives, basically? The lesson, the moral of the story, okay, is, so, the moral of the story is literally, like, the only thing that Miles likes about, that I could ever think that Miles loves about Tate is that she stuck around. That she dealt with his bullshit and gave him a chance. Or I would say gave him 10 goddamn chances because he was a fucking dick the whole time. And that is a bad message to send young women who are probably reading this. I'm pretty sure teenagers are reading this, even though there's a lot of sex in it. People are going to read this who are young and are going to think, oh, that's what men like. If I just stick around through all of the like horrible abusive shit they might put me through, they're going to turn around and make it up to me. No. Bad message to send kids. Horrible message. And do you want to know the absolute most unrealistic thing in this book was that this man, Miles, has not had sex in 6 years, okay? Okay? Fine. He's been absent in 6 years. Whatever. But the last time he had sex, okay, he's pretty young still. He's not like 35, and the last time he had sex was 29, and no. The last time he had sex, he was a teenager, okay? He was a teenager. And I am pretty sure when you're a teenager, most people, even Miles, because like a year of him being 18, he was with Rachel. No way in hell is he that good. No way in hell that he was that good at sex as a teenager to then be to the point that 6 years later, when you have sex with Tate, it's just that amazing. And she's like dickmatized. She just can't get past how good he is and how like confident he is with his... No way! That is the most unrealistic thing about this whole book. Okay? And I'm mad about it. The thing is I did give this 3 stars. Okay? I would have given it a lot less, but just the fact that I felt so many emotions, even though it be angry, and I kept thinking about the book a lot, I gave it a 3. Okay? It would have been a 2, but I gave it a 3. I would call this a tragedy. I would call this story a tragedy with a lot of romantic elements, but it is not a romance. No. Let me talk about another thing that I did not like about the book was the character Dylan. First off, genius for Miss Colleen Hoover to name Dylan spelled Dillon. Because this man Dylan is he's a douche. And by spelling it Dillon, just oozes douchiness, okay? I love that. Love that. But his character was pointless. Why have him... He had no real reason to be in the book. He did not really cause any conflict in the book at all. He was useless. He was just there. And it's kind of like one of those Chekhov's gun. Like, you never shoot the Chekhov's gun. Because Dylan was the first person that Tate ever really meets in the book. Like, he shows up in the first 10 pages, Dylan. So you'd expect him to be important. but he's not at all. So that really annoyed me. Also, the second thing I really did not like about the book was the smut. I'm a sucker for sex scenes, okay? I really do like sex books. I'm just saying, I like sex books. But the way that they were trying to craft this story, you could read any of the sex, like, they were all, nothing stood out. And they were all, like, you could read most of the sex scenes out of order, and it would not change the story at all. I wish that Colleen Hoover gave more story elements within the sex scenes, if that makes sense. Like, try to move the plot forward with sex, because that is all Tate and Miles do. All they do, basically, in the whole book is have sex. So why not try to move the plot forward with it, you know? They barely do that. What they do is they have a really good time having sex, and they're good. And then he fucks up during sex, and then they're bad. And then they get back together and do sex, and they're good. And then he fucks up during sex, and then it gets bad. Like, it's just it's not even like a progression of plot or climax. It's just, and it's, yeah. The sex wasn't interesting, and it didn't build up, you know? But yeah, I don't even know what else to say. I have a lot to say. Oh, also, poor Tate, man. She's supposed to be the heroine of this book, but because Miles is such an asshole, she really is picking up little scraps of, like, oh my god, he might like me. Like, for half the sex scenes of this book, he doesn't make eye contact with Tate while they're having sex. And she literally asks him, like, oh, how come you don't make eye contact with me? And he says, oh, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. And, like, okay, kind of fucked up. Like, are you basically not imagining that she's a real like, you don't want to make eye contact with the person that you're literally having, like, it feels objectifying. Like, you feel like you're an object, you know? Might as well you use a freaking pocket pussy or something, you know? And then halfway through the book, he finally, like, makes eye contact with her and keeps making eye contact with her after that. And she gets into this, like, oh my god, like, he must like me because he's making eye contact with me. And when they get into their, like, big fight, like, I'm just like, how? You literally, like, how? What? Like, you should be having eye contact, and she's really praising him because he made eye contact with her. And he comes back at the very end of the book to try to get Tate's forgiveness for being an asshole and, like, breaking her heart 1,000,000 times. And the first thing he says to her is, I miss you. He pulls a goddamn fucking I miss you. And Tate, her mind is blown. She's like, oh my god, he said he misses me. I'm like, literally, this man is doing the bare minimum, less than the bare minimum, and you are still, obsessed with him. What? What? He's literally just telling you he hasn't said I love you. He hasn't given you anything. He's just giving you his dick, and he just said, I miss you. And you're like, okay, forgiven. You miss me? Forgiven. Fuck that, you know? Okay, so that's basically that. And then the last thing I hated about this book was how Miles I don't think that this man has ever been in love. I think it's just lust. Really. Because he literally explains, from the first moment I saw her, I knew she was going to have I knew she was going to have all my babies. What? Or, like, that was with Rachel, right? And then with Tate, he's like, I knew when she was sleeping on the couch or sleeping in the bedroom, and I first laid my eyes on her, she looked like an angel, and I knew she was either going to be the death of me or the one who brought me back to life. I can't believe I memorized that line, but that's almost word for word what it said. And in my head, I'm just like, you've never said one word to her, and you just see her sleeping, and you're like, this girl's gonna bring me back to life. You don't even know her. How? Like, it's, like, it's not good. But I do have to say, it really did pull on my heartstrings, and I really, really tried to love this book. It pulled my heartstrings when Miles lost the baby, and I think that this book is good if you see it as a tragedy, and you see it as Miles, like, trying to like, be a better person, or, like, get over what happened 6 years ago. But honestly, this whole book didn't need to happen if this man just went to therapy. Like, for real. He could have just gone to therapy, and he would have saved a lot of goddamn motherfucking feelings. Like, a lot of heartbreak. Poor Tate, man. She was put through the ringer, and I really believe that this book should have ended with her leaving him. And the lesson be, don't treat people like shit, and don't objectify people, and stand up for yourself, and then have him move on another way. Because this romance, I don't see it working out. Sorry. So that is my rant on Ugly Love. I'm really sorry if you liked this book. I really liked it, but at the same time I really hated it. I have very, very mixed feelings. It's so, like, I tabbed the fuck out of it, and I really want to reread it because I loved the story. I just thought it was so, so toxic, and it was giving such a wrong message to women out there. Yeah. Anyways, goodbye.